The 30 Years' War. The 80 Years' War. Resolved by a pair of treaties, the Treaty of Munster and the Treaty of Osnabrück, a series of compromises made in modern history that has an impact on the current political system of the world, the Peace of Westphalia.
It would be hard to imagine this world that would be carved into discrete territorial units where you have very clear agreed borders, and this idea that in principle one government recognizes another government's right to rule exclusively on that territory, however they decide to set up that government. And this idea, and so I think that these are sort of relatively new ideas. That the Treaty of Westphalia really was the cornerstone, that was the foundation that international system was sort of built off of.
Although it is widely forgotten, the Peace of Westphalia is important to conflict and compromise in history because it ended two of the longest, most destructive conflicts in European history, the 30 Years' War and the 80 Years' War, and formed a basis for some crucial principles of international relations and law, such as territorial sovereignty and religious tolerance that exist even today.
The Treaty of Westphalia officially put an end to the 30 Years' War. The treaty declared that the individual sovereign state would henceforth become the highest level of authority. That the head of each state would have the right to determine the religion of the state.
The 80 Years' War began as a conflict between the 17 provinces of the Netherlands and the Spanish king to end the political and religious dominance of Spain over the Netherlands. In 1581, the United Provinces of the Netherlands was formed as a result of this conflict. In the beginning of the 17th century, the 12 Years' Truce was signed, which called for a ceasefire between the two regions of the Netherlands. Afterwards, several battles took place that coincided with the 30 Years' War. Soon after, the conflict that went on for 80 years ended with the compromise of the Treaty of Munster, a part of the Peace of Westphalia. The 30 Years' War started as a war on religions when the Austrian Habsburgs tried to force Roman Catholicism on their Protestant subjects in Bohemia. Countries like Britain, Denmark, and the Dutch Republic fought the war in favor of the Protestants. The conflicts escalated, and the war continued until 1645 on German soil, with the Holy Roman Empire in Spain against France and Sweden. After facing many defeats, the Habsburgs were forced to make compromises that led to the creation of the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. The Peace of Westphalia ended one of the longest, most destructive conflicts in European history, during which around 20% of Germany's population died. European peasantry were heavily taxed to support the armies. The armies plundered cities and villages for supplies. Murder, rape, and arson became an everyday occurrence for the commoners. Infectious diseases like the plague spread like wildfire, killing thousands. Agriculture declined rapidly and resulted in famine. A historian claims Sweden alone destroyed 2,000 castles, 18,000 villages, and 1,500 towns in Germany during the 30 Years' War. In an attempt to overcome all of these catastrophic conflicts, the Peace of Westphalia was proposed. The peace conference that resulted in one of the most important compromises in world history commenced in 1641 and was signed in 1648. It was presided over by 194 states, represented by 179 diplomats, along with thousands of auxiliary diplomats and support staff from most of the major European continental powers: Spain, France, the Dutch Republic, the Swedish Empire, the House of Habsburg, the Holy Roman Emperor, and the Free Imperial Cities monarchs, the first of its kind. The Treaty of Munster ended the conflict between Spain and the Netherlands, as well as the Holy Roman Empire and France, while the Treaty of Osnabrück ended the conflict between Sweden and the Holy Roman Empire. The Peace of Westphalia formed a basis for some crucial principles of international relations and law, such as territorial sovereignty and religious tolerance that exist even today. It was the first united effort to achieve a fair compromise for many conflicts that resulted in comparative peace. This compromise redrew the map of Europe. France was established as a major power, Netherlands and Switzerland gained independence, Sweden gained territory, German principalities were divided just as before, and some territories were handed over to foreign rulers. It also ended the domination of the Habsburg Empire, marking the end of the Holy Roman Empire. The peace allowed states to become more powerful as European leaders collected taxes to support national armies. Austria, Russia, England, France, the United Provinces of the Netherlands, and Belgium became the world leaders until the 19th century as a result of this balance of power. The Peace of Westphalia recognized the principle of sovereignty and the fundamental rights of political self-determination, which meant that each party had to respect the territorial rights of all other parties and not to interfere in their domestic affairs, giving birth to the sovereign states of modern Europe.
I think the contemporary international system, in fact, if you look around the planet today, there's very little territory that is not carved into what we call a sovereign international state. And it was really the Peace of Westphalia that created this kind of foundational institution of sovereignty, this idea. And so in a lot of ways, it's kind of the organizing principle. It's how we've organized international political life in the world, much the way we have a constitution that organizes political life domestically in the United States.
The 80th article of the Peace of Westphalia was about the free trade across the Rhine, Rhone, and Danube rivers in Europe, which signifies that the treaty not only included the political and religious concepts, but also the economic compromises between countries to facilitate reconstruction after the 30 Years' War. This article paved the way for the Treaty of Maastricht in 1992, one of the most important treaties that helped establish the current European Union.
The Westphalian model of sovereignty influenced the international system that we currently see in a number of ways. The predominant one is in its inclusion in the United Nations Charter and the prohibition of the use of force between states, as well as the sovereign equality of all states.
The Peace of Westphalia inspired articles about equality, sovereignty of countries, and the civil and human rights that were so crucial that they made their place in the Treaty of the United Nations. The Peace of Westphalia was not just one of the compromises in history, but a system that was most morally and intellectually engaging to all parties, that included religious tolerance and the principle of non-intervention in the internal affairs of other countries.
At the time, the sovereign states decided that, in fact, rulers would be able to decide. But at the same time, there was a recognition that you could not impose that national religion on minorities. And that was a rather novel idea, right? Later on, we would have a lot of talk about individual rights. But really this idea that minorities, especially minority religious groups, could have rights, I think is something that you can sort of find in those debates and in the sort of treaties themselves.
The peace recognized religious freedom of countries, allowing citizens of those countries to practice one of the three faiths that the empire had previously been split into during the Protestant Reformation: Catholic, Lutheran, and Calvinist. These religions gained due recognition, and as a result, Calvinists also gained the right to vote and a legitimate status like Protestants. This peace conference was the first secular and general congress in world history where the states assembled and decided on common rules. It was a way of incorporating multiple societies, religions, and states into a search for a more peaceful and orderly world. To this day, centuries after the Peace of Westphalia was signed, the citizens of Germany still hold the annual Augsburg Peace Festival on August 8th to celebrate the impact of the two treaties that put an end to two of the most interminable, devastating conflicts in history, which set a precedent for the many multinational compromises to come, and established fundamental concepts of international relations like territorial sovereignty and religious tolerance that are followed by sovereign states today. A study conducted by Rachel Alberstadt states, simply put, the Peace of Westphalia created a model of which later agreements or treaties could be copied from, because Westphalia was the first to have the international dynamics and complexity needed to relevantly impact contemporary law. Westphalian issues are not outdated, nor are the approaches to solving them.
In some ways, Peace of Westphalia is born out of both conflict and compromise, right? It is a peace treaty, so it is an attempt to address the underlying issues of conflict between rulers, while at the same time recognizing that the only way to address those issues is not necessarily to come to agreement, but compromise on what can and can't be done between those rulers.
It was a turning point in history that settled conflicts through compromises that led to peace, and brought with it principles that impact the world.